But a quick overview. On the fire rescue side, what we're seeing a lot is that fire departments are using these platforms to do pre-planning for future testing and field hospital sites. And this is a very fascinating use case because they're in essence creating orthomosaic 2D or potentially 3D maps, and then in post, they overlay them into GIS, additional software layers, and start making annotations. They can do traffic flow measurements. So a lot of pre-planning. We saw one particular case that was very interesting in New York City at the Javits Convention Center, which had been turned into a field hospital. They used one of the Matrice 210 with the XT2 thermal camera, stationary, as a secondary device to check temperature of the staff coming in the morning. They had several hundred people that had to be checked. And at the time, the non-contact handheld devices to do measurements had been on back order because everybody wanted them. So they wanted to use that. They figured out a way to calibrate it. And if somebody was outside of a particular parameter, they would just pull that person aside and do a proper test. Obviously, this technology was never meant to do aerial body temperature checks. And as you may know, if you use a technology for any sort of health purposes or medical purposes, it becomes a medical device. And as such, here in the United States, has to go through a fairly rigorous process of getting validated. But we're also seeing departments using these drones for traffic flow monitoring, especially at those testing sites. Very fascinating. On the law enforcement side, we're seeing a lot of homeless population outreach missions, and that is very prevalent here in California, as we have a very dense homeless population, and they are sometimes very underserved and need additional attention. We're going to go into a couple of those examples in later slides. We're seeing departments utilize them to remind people that are inside closed parks or inside at closed beaches that they're not supposed to be there. But we're also seeing some departments utilizing them in areas of higher potential for crime. Now that businesses are closed, the break-ins still happen. The not so good guys apparently don't listen to healthcare advice and stay home. Obviously, they think it's a good idea to go and be not so good guys at night in areas where nobody is around or less patrols are happening. So we're seeing some of those use cases as well. Now, I want to go into a couple of these examples. Chula Vista Police here in Southern California, they are part of the FAA IPP program. And for the last close to a year and a half or so, they are utilizing a very different deployment methodology. And that is, they're using the drone as a true first responder, meaning that the drone takes off from the roof of a station and then flies straight to the site where the incident or the 911 call came in. And that allows for a much faster response time. They usually get on scene before ground units get there and can already give an idea of what is happening, or at times have the ability to close out a call and reroute inbound units to other areas where needed. But in this particular case, Chula Vista teamed up with part of their homeless outreach program and the county's health department, and went to some of the homeless communities that were very hard to reach inside canyons. They created a staged service location at those canyon exits, and at those locations they had a variety of items from personal hygiene kit to food to testing kits. And in order to get the attention, they would utilize the drone with the speaker and share some public health messages in a couple of languages, and ask those individuals to come forward and come to the staging site and get that support that they may need, medical screening, food, and so on. And what's very fascinating is they covered about 8 square miles, And what they were able to do in 3 hours would have usually taken them at least 2 days without the drone support. So tremendous time and effort saving, plus a much faster approach for everyone involved. If you want to see a video about this, here is your first chance to utilize the cool QR codes. So if you scan this one, it should get you to a YouTube video that will show you the video that they put together talking about this particular outreach program. Moving on, Fremont Fire Department. Here we have a very good use case example of a department using this aerial technology to start pre-planning. They had 2 COVID-19 testing sites, one in their own city and one in Hayward, a city right next door. At both, they utilized the technology because the concern was there that long vehicle lines and walk-up lines would impede local traffic. So they did not only the pre-planning, but then also during the testing hours, the drones would monitor the line of traffic, get a vehicle count, document activity for future needs, but also give information to individuals waiting in line on how much longer it will take from a certain point to be at the testing tent. So very good information for everyone that was planning on getting a test. And as you can see, getting this aerial overview gives a very good idea of how is it impacting the local traffic. Are people in line, the walk-up lines, are they congregating in big groups or are they spaced out properly? It's just a very, very helpful view for them to have live and make better and smarter decisions to facilitate hundreds of tests being done in a few hours. This is an aerial overview of one of the Fremont testing sites. This overview helped them plan the layout, the in and outs for the vehicles and work to stage equipment. Linn County Sheriff's Office, they created a very interesting solution, what I call like do-it-yourself type solution to deliver a bottle of medicine or gloves or masks to the front door of a home so that people didn't have to walk up. And they used this big cup where once it touches down, it tips over and it, in essence spills out whatever is inside. So the idea really is, if need be, that they can keep a distance between individuals, just fly this over to the front porch, drop it off, and go back to their regular activities. Very simple design that they did with this big cup and zip ties. Nothing is being dropped from the air, but just by sheer fact of gravity landing and the cup tipping over, and the way it was designed, it spills out what is inside. Very simple design. It's not your everyday type of use, but can come in handy in those situations where you want to keep that social distance. Contra Costa County Sheriff here in Northern California, they did a pre-planning field hospital site where they utilized orthomosaic imagery to create a 2D and 3D map of a county federal medical station that was being set up with 250 beds. And they documented it with the 3D interactive map, but then they also documented it inside by flying through the facility before anyone was in there to outline what it looked like. Altogether, the goal was to do better egress and ingress points to outline potential areas of concern. But then also, once this is in full operation, that they have the ability to do aerial patrols of the perimeter and keep situational awareness around this facility. This is an image of their map, the orthomosaic. We're also seeing some Overwatch activities, and this one is very interesting because this is in essence something that is not done actively, but they're departments are preparing in case. And what is done is that they may have the need to increase patrols or change their deployment methodology depending on what is happening in the community, and to keep an overwatch over key areas or regions or business parks, as I mentioned earlier, that may be inviting to criminals to do what they're not supposed to do. So what departments are doing, they're setting up and saving waypoint flight mission maps. They're setting them up so that the mission is always over a road, and they're planning it out so that they can cover an area with one battery. Should the need arise, then they have the ability to deploy and fly that particular mission while keeping overwatch and doing all of that from a fairly safe distance. Obviously, line of sight and visual observer still applies, but these are some of these forward-thinking ideas that have come out of this. Now, as we see the market continue to grow, it's amazing to see that by later this year, we will have 10 times more commercial drones than manned aircraft or crewed aircraft. And so that's a tremendous growth that we've seen in the last few years. And just the growth of non-hobbyist flyers by 2021 from 2016, 10 times, it's tremendous. With that obviously also come a lot of other challenges, but for public safety, it has definitely been a very, very helpful tool. Now, what we have seen, unfortunately, over the last few days, we've also seen somewhat of a backlash in regards to drones being used, specifically drones being used from DJI, being a China-based company that operates globally. A lot of links and a lot of speculations have happened. Nothing new. We've gone through this in 2017 with a New York Times article, with a ICE memo that was leaked, that was never released, making very big accusation on what is being done with this data. And obviously at DJI, we take these topics very, very serious and have implemented additional protocols to deal with data security concerns. We've also done a variety of independent studies that validated the data security practices on our platforms. Reality is the operator is in full control of his or her data, and it's not going anywhere unless the operator chooses to share that data. And that is extremely important to understand and realize, because data security is important. Data security is not a new topic. We have gone over the data security concept for years. What is needed, though, is we should have a standard for various areas of utilization. For example, on a federal level, we have a very different data security standard than on a local fire department level. So it is imperative that we set these standards in mind of what is the drone use case, which, as I mentioned, can be very different. Some of the improved tools that we have released is the local data mode, for example, where your device will not communicate. As you know, most of the drones are being flown by a smart device integrated into the drone. That could be an iPhone, it could be an iPad, an Android device, or a Crystal Sky monitor that runs Android. And if there is a connectivity, then there could be a potential for data being shared. Local data mode takes that completely offline so that there is absolutely no data being transferred. We've also, as I mentioned, upgraded our geofencing, and we've also improved our unlocking procedure outside of the QEP, which I mentioned earlier, for public safety to unlock. But reality is, this is an entire, not only DJI issue, but it's an ecosystem and an industry-wide issue that needs to be taken into consideration. We can do a lot of great things here at DJI, and we're taking all of this very serious, but there is more. There's the ecosystem. There are the system integrators, the software developers that create solutions, and then of course our service providers and the policymakers. But then also we have the industry, the drone industry, that has the turnkey solutions, and the airspace infrastructure companies and individuals, the data integration people. This is something that we all as a community have to come together and work on and stand up on. What I can tell you is that we keep active track on drones saving or rescuing lives across the world. And we have to date 378 lives that have been saved because of a drone. And those are only the documented cases. Just this morning, we had another case in Croatia where a drone saved an elderly 79-year-old woman that got lost on a mountain. This technology has benefits. It has benefits to the public. It has benefits to our public safety people on the ground risks. It allows them to operate with better data, faster, make better and faster decisions that can help not only save lives, but also structures and buildings. So the technology is here, the benefits are understood. There's still lots of work that has to be done, not only at DJI, but as the entire industry and all the ecosystem components come together. Now, I mentioned that I will give you some resources, so have your QR code scanner ready, because here are some information. The Humanitarian Code of Conduct, if you scan this one, it will get you to that. Very, very great information from our colleagues over at the UAviator and We Robotics. They had a webinar earlier this morning, fantastic information. The Qualified Entities Program, if you are a public safety entity that is operating under either COA or a 107, if you scan this, it will get you the information you need to get your drones unlocked, and all the information can be found by scanning this particular QR code. Just one thing, if you are filling out your QEP application, we ask you for the flight controller serial number. A lot of operators don't know where to find that. It's inside your app. You have to have everything turned on, and here are the information on how to get to that flight controller serial number. It needs both the flight controller serial number and your login. That is kind of like a two-key authorization methodology. Drone responders, if you're not familiar with drone responders, this is a fantastic organization that brings together public safety drone operators from across the nation, including global participants. And they have a fantastic resource center that has a lot of information in there, including some FAA COVID-19 SGI information. If you are a member of this organization, which is free, please go into the resource center. A lot of good stuff. This QR code gets you right there. And our COVID-19 response use case, I just saw it. I made a misspelling there. Romeo, what are you doing? But don't look at that. Look at this QR code, scan that one, and it gets you to our latest version of all the information that we have collected here in the United States on how departments are using the technology. We will be updating this document next Wednesday, because we are going to have a webinar specifically talking more in depth about COVID-19 responses. And this last or second to last QR code will get you information about that webinar. And one last thing, we are also collecting data for an after action report that we want to put together with some of the stakeholders on COVID-19 operations, not only in the United States, but globally. If you're a department that is utilizing drones for COVID-19, please go to this link and fill in some of those information. This really helps in the development of this after action report. We're learning a lot of very good information that not only as a manufacturer can help us figure out better solutions, but as an industry can potentially prepare us better for a future disaster, hopefully nothing in the scale of this, and you know, preferably in wishful thinking, no major disaster. On my last thought is that I'm going to go back to the ecosystem component. DJI is one of the many manufacturers of drone technology. This is not just about the drone. The drone is just one piece of the entire solution. The majority of drone applications in public safety are data collection applications, either live data where we want to see a live fire, a live incident, and make decisions based out of that, or then taking data and then analyzing it in post-flight, creating these orthomosaic maps of accident reconstructions or testing sites or whatever the case may be. So the drone is just one piece of all of this, and there are so many other pieces that have to come into this entire system to make it work, to make it usable, to make it beneficial. And it takes more than just a drone manufacturer. It takes the entire community. And this is always a good reminder that we are actually moving lightning fast, especially here in the United States. And big kudos also to the colleagues over at the FAA for being extremely supportive, not only in the general drone industry, but also on the public safety aspect. Because if we can enable our first responder and emergency workers to utilize new technology to do their jobs better and safer, it's a win for everyone involved. And that takes not only the recognition of the manufacturers, but all the people that are behind all of that. And oftentimes they don't always get that recognition. And I definitely want to thank the FAA for being so supportive to not only our public safety officials and departments, but to the entire drone industry. And that would be it from my side.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Romeo, for that that detailed look at how drones are helping in disaster relief. Thank you so much for all of that information. For all of our viewers out there, we will send you all of Romeo's slides as well as all of the slides from our presenters today, so you'll have access to those QR codes, those links, and all of the information that Romeo was presenting just then. And so thank you once again, Romeo from DJI, for joining us today. There at the end of his presentation, Romeo was highlighting the work done by the FAA. So